Just kill me fast, she said, not loudly, not begging, more like stating a rule that had already been agreed upon by the world. The words drifted in the cold air of the ruined valley, thin as smoke. The soldier had been moving barn to barn, checking shadows, listening for the wrong kind of silence. He stopped because he recognized that tone. It was the sound of someone who had run out of arguments with pain. She stood half hidden by a broken stall door, her hair matted with dust and old rain, boots too big for her feet. She was older than the war had made her look, younger than the war had decided she should be. When he raised his rifle by instinct, she didn't flinch. That was what broke his step. People always flinched, even the brave ones did. I won't run, she added, eyes empty but sharp, tracking every movement he made. I won't scream, just, fast. He lowered the rifle, slowly. He remembered being taught that slow movements kept people alive, both the one holding the weapon and the one staring down its mouth. He took a knee instead, letting the mud soak through his trousers. The barn smelled of rotten old hay, the sweet sour scent of a place that used to be useful. Wind threaded through the broken boards, lifting loose straw and carrying it away like memories no one wanted. What happened to you? He asked, surprised at how calm his voice sounded. She laughed once, a sound without humor. Everything. Her hands were shaking, not the tremor of fear, but the kind that came from hunger and exhaustion layered too thick to peel apart. He unclipped his canteen and held it out, cap already loosened. She stared at it as if it might explode. Don't, she warned. If you're going to do it, don't pretend. I'm not, he said. I'm just sitting. Minutes stretched. A crow cawed somewhere beyond the hills. He set the canteen down between them, close enough to reach, far enough to refuse. He noticed the bruises on her wrists, the way her sleeves were tugged down despite the cold, the careful way she stood as if certain movements cost more than others. War had taught him to read damage quickly, on buildings, on vehicles, on people. She swallowed. They said soldiers would finish it, she muttered. One way or another. He felt the old anger stir, the useless kind that had nowhere to go. Not this one, he said, and meant it, even if he didn't yet know how. Her gaze flicked to his insignia, then to his face, as if comparing them for honesty. You're alone, she said. So are you. That landed. Her shoulders sagged a fraction, like a rope finally loosening. She stepped forward, then stopped, breath hitching as pain flashed across her face. He didn't move to help, not yet. He waited for permission, because war taught you that taking without asking was just another weapon. There's a reason, she said finally, voice low. Why I said it that way. Fast. Why I don't care how. She reached for the hem of her skirt, fingers stiff, hesitating. He shook his head gently. You don't owe me anything, he said. I need you to see, she replied. Then you'll understand. The barn seemed to lean closer, boards creaking as if listening. He nodded once, careful, and shifted nearer, not looming, not retreating. When she gave the smallest nod in return, he lifted the fabric just enough to look, hands steady, respectful, as if touching evidence rather than skin. What he saw made the cold inside him sharpen. His breath stopped halfway in, and the world narrowed to a single, awful certainty. This wasn't about mercy killing or battlefield endings. This was about what people did when they thought no one would stop them. She watched his face change and closed her eyes, bracing for the usual reaction. He let the fabric fall back into place and sat back on his heels. Jaw tight, eyes burning with something that wasn't desire or disgust. Oh, he said quietly. And in that single word was rage, sorrow, and a promise he hadn't yet spoken, but already felt binding him to her fate. She kept her eyes closed longer than necessary, as if the dark behind her lids was safer than reading his reaction. Experience had taught her the sequence, first the pause, then the smile or the sneer, then the bargaining tone that pretended to be gentle. Her body prepared for it before her mind could object. When nothing happened, confusion crept in, sharp and unwelcome. You can look away now, she said quietly. Most people do after. I'm not most people, he replied, and surprised himself with how steady the words came out. She opened her eyes. He wasn't staring where others had. His gaze was fixed somewhere beyond her shoulder, like he needed distance to keep from breaking something important. The fabric had already been lowered, arranged with care, like a boundary restored. That small detail hit her harder than any touch. They said it was a mark, she went on, voice flat, as if reciting a fact learned by repetition. So I wouldn't forget who I belong to. In case I survived. He felt the phrase land like a blade between his ribs. Belong to. Survived. Words that shouldn't share the same sentence. He forced himself to breathe slowly, because anger here would only frighten her. Rage had scared enough people in her life. They were wrong, he said. She snorted softly. About what part? All of it. She studied him now, really studied him, like someone checking the strength of ice before stepping out. You didn't ask me my name, she noted. I figured you'd tell me when you wanted to. Another pause. Wind scraped the barn door, making it groan. Somewhere far off, artillery muttered like distant thunder. The war hadn't stopped for their conversation, and maybe that was why it felt unreal, two damaged pieces refusing to keep moving on schedule. They took it, she said suddenly. My name, first thing, said it made things easier. For them, he answered. She nodded once. For everyone else too. It's easier when you're not a person. He reached into his pack, slow, announcing each movement without meaning to. I've got food, he said. Dry bread. It's not much. She shook her head. If I eat, it means I plan to live. That's not a crime, he said. She laughed again, quieter this time. Depends who's watching. He tore the bread in half anyway and set a piece beside the canteen. He didn't push it closer. Didn't comment when her eyes kept sliding back to it like a guilty thought. He wondered how many choices she'd been allowed lately. Probably none that mattered. You could have walked away, she said. Most do. Or worse. I know, he said. I didn't. She hugged her arms around herself, coatless, shivering now that adrenaline had faded. He slipped his jacket off and held it out, offering it like a truce. She hesitated, then took it, burying her face in the fabric for a second too long. It smelled like smoke and soap and road dust, proof of a world still moving. Why are you here? She asked into the collar. Because someone has to be, he replied. That earned him a look, sharp, searching, almost angry. That's not an answer. He met her gaze. Because I'm tired of pretending I didn't see things like that, he said. And because if I walk away now, I'll hear your voice every time I close my eyes. Silence again. This one felt different, less brittle. She sank down onto an overturned crate, exhaustion finally winning. He stayed standing, giving her space, keeping watch on the broken doorway like the world might try to interrupt. They said soldiers were all the same, she murmured. That you'd look at me and finish what they started. He shook his head. They don't get to write my orders. She pulled the jacket tighter. You know what happens if they find me with you. I do. And you're still here. Yes. Something shifted then. Not hope, not yet, but the absence of certainty. The idea that maybe the end wasn't as close as she'd been told. She reached for the bread, fingers trembling, and took a small bite, as if daring the universe to object. He pretended not to notice his own hands shaking in relief. Outside, dawn was still hours away. But for the first time since the brand burned into her skin, the night didn't feel endless. Dawn came reluctantly, a thin gray seeped through the cracks in the barn-like light, unsure it was welcome. He had stayed awake all night, back to the wall, rifle resting across his knees, listening to the valley breathe. She slept in broken pieces, jerking awake at every unfamiliar sound, the jacket still wrapped tight around her as if it were armor. Each time she startled, he said nothing, just shifted so she could see him, solid and unchanging. When the light grew strong enough to show the dust in the air, she finally sat up. You're still here, she said, not accusing, not grateful, just surprised. So are you, he replied. She studied her hands as if they belonged to someone else. They were steadier now, not healed, not whole, but steadier. They'll come back, she said. They always circle around. I know, he said. And you can't take me with you, she added quickly, the old certainty trying to claw its way back. I'd slow you down. I'd be a problem. He considered that. War had trained him to measure weight, speed, usefulness. He hated that part of himself, but he trusted it to be honest. You won't slow me, he said. You'll change my route. She looked up sharply. That's worse. Maybe, he admitted, but it's mine to choose. He offered his hand, not to pull her, not to lead, just there. She stared at it for a long time, jaw tight, fighting something invisible. Finally, she took it. Her grip was tentative, like she expected him to vanish. Outside, the world looked different in daylight. More damaged, more ordinary. The valley stretched quiet and scarred, dotted with the remains of lives interrupted. He scanned the ridgeline, alert now, all the soldier instincts sliding back into place. He hated that too, the way survival snapped on like a switch. But this time, it wasn't just for himself. A distant engine hummed. She stiffened instantly. "That's them," she whispered. "Or someone like them." He guided her behind a collapsed stone wall, keeping his body between her and the sound. He raised his rifle, not aiming yet, just ready. The engine grew louder, then faded, passing on the road beyond the hill. He waited long after it disappeared before lowering the weapon. She let out a breath she'd been holding for years. "You didn't run," she said. "No," he answered. "Neither did you." They walked until the barn was a smudge behind them. Each step seemed to cost her something, but she didn't complain. When she stumbled, he slowed without comment. When she stopped to rest, he kept watch. It wasn't heroic, it was deliberate. Near the river, they heard trucks, many this time. Friendly markings, relief units, the kind of people who asked questions and wrote things down. She froze, panic flooding back. "They'll see it," she said. They'll know what happened," he corrected gently. "Not who you are." She shook her head. "You don't understand. Once it's seen, it's all anyone sees." He stepped in front of her, blocking the view of the road with his own body. "Then they'll see me first," he said. The trucks rolled closer. Voices carried on the air. He raised his arm in signal, firm and unmistakable. When the nearest medic jogged over, eyes already cataloging injuries, he spoke before anyone could look past him. "She's under my protection," he said. "Not loud, certain." The medic hesitated, reading his face, then nodded. Orders were flexible things when conviction entered the room. They brought a blanket, water, a stretcher. She refused. He didn't force it. As they moved toward the convoy, she leaned close and whispered, "Why are you doing this?" He thought of 100 answers, guilt, anger, duty, defiance, but none felt complete. "Because they tried to end you without killing you," he said. "And I won't help them finish." She swallowed hard. For the first time, she said a name. Not loudly, just enough for him to hear. It sounded fragile, precious. He repeated it once, carefully, like a vow. When the trucks pulled away, carrying them towards something unknown, she watched the valley recede and felt the brand burn less, not because it was gone, but because it no longer owned the story. Someone had seen it and chosen her anyway. And that choice, quiet and stubborn, felt like the beginning of a life that hadn't been written yet.